school being destroyed in Palestine. It was built by the European Union, or like, of course, an organization built directly by the European Union, right?
It was paid for by the European
All right, paid for by the European Union, and it was demolished, I guess, by the Israeli army for not meeting up their standards. Daniel, what's going on?
Okay, so this is continued coverage on, what the hell is happening in Israel, part 57 or something like that, where a European Union, again, very big, just GDP similar to the U.S., very powerful people, went and said, hey, look, Palestine is just in ruins from being bombed over centuries, not having concrete able to come in, literally being an open-air prison, things of that nature. Let's help them build up their infrastructure. So one of the things, there's over 100 structures that were built in all this, but one of the things that was built was a school. And they did a good job of building it. They built it. Of course, all the schools get destroyed immediately in general by Israel because, they could hide terrible people, students. And so 3 weeks ago, this was built. And of course, Israel being the magnanimous, kind, open, not hypocritical nation that it was. And again, this is not in Israel proper. This is in Palestinian territory. Just went in and tore it down to the foundation because it didn't meet Israeli permitting, because they didn't get the permit from Israel to build in another country. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. So there were 64 children from 1st to 4th grade that had only been back to school for 3 days before Israeli forces just came into a sovereign nation and just destroyed their school. And now they're being taught in tents. Kids were obviously just heartbroken because now they're, it gets really hot in the Mideast, and now they're just under tents trying to give them an education with no electricity. I'm not sure what books they have. Doesn't seem like they have a lot if the school's gone. And then people were asking, why did Israel do this? Why did they destroy schools? What risk could they possibly pose? And again, these are in Palestine, made by the EU, and Israel's like, I don't give a shit about the EU or what they're doing. We're going to decide what goes on in Palestine. So this is one of 3 schools, educational facilities, I want to use the wording they have here, that have been destroyed in the West Bank in the last 2 weeks. They just go in and they just destroy them. Look at that. They had another school which was torn down, and they had another school which had solar panels, which was the only electricity they have because Israel's destroyed that infrastructure. They just stole the solar panels. Israel's counter is, well, we have a permitting process that you want to go to, and we told them that they couldn't build it because it was outside of the permitting process, even though when people apply for the permitting process, Israel's like, denied. So the European Union says that about 100 structures, homes, shelters, water networks, as well as schools in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, for which the EU or EU member states have provided funding, have been demolished or seized over the past year. Israel, again, more to the permitting. They're like, oh, remember, this is our area, we control it, even though it's in another country. Permitting process, we don't let you permit, so everyone has to build anyway, because on some level, it's like, imagine if you wanted to build something in the U.S., but Mexico's like, can't do it, you need a permit from us. That's the situation that we're dealing with in Israel. That's the situation that we're dealing with in Palestine. And I gotta say again, how do you keep your children educated, which helps them gain a higher status in life? Because we know what happens everywhere on the planet where people are in poverty, high unemployment, and an education. And then Israel, in 20 years, these same kids that can't get an education right now, Israel's going to be like, where did all this violence come from? We had no idea. What? If there's no reason, going exactly back to what we're talking about in the Middle East. No one with power takes responsibility for their actions and then blames the people who suffer the consequences because they can't do anything about it for the actions that are not within their control.
Yeah, Paul.
This is not what a two-state solution should look like. Right, I always want to reopen that conversation because people talk about it as though like, well, it's a given. This is the way it should be. And I point out things like this. This is not a brand new thing. The fact that Palestine is essentially under military occupation And Israel essentially is their military police everywhere and has this permitting program, right? So if you're a Palestinian, you're trying to like build up a house or build up a farm or build up, an orchard so you can grow food for your family and make a business. Like, it's just not possible.
You can't do anything.
Because you have to get permission from the Israelis to build in Palestine? How is this 2 states? Yeah. What is going on?
I want to give this is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I think as time goes on, it's less and less of a stretch. This is like Jews in the ghetto in World War II, Germany, having to ask permission to start up a store or something within the ghetto. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
It's, you know what, we got to remember that this ridiculous situation that's happening in Israel is only going to escalate and get even worse. It's like, no matter what the Palestinians do, it still is not going to meet Israel's requirements, and everything they do is going to be wrong. And the thing is that we know what's happening there is wrong. We know that this isn't right, but it seems like Israel is moving closer and closer to or actually is now, somewhat of an apartheid state that's really just, trampling on human rights and human dignity. And the thing is, this is almost like a dark comedy to where you have to really look at Israel and say, like, are you becoming what you fought against or swore that you would never become, and you're doing this to other people?
The answer is yes.
It has the makings of a dark comedy, and we're seeing it firsthand, and I'm not laughing.
Well, the other thing about this that struck me is it's so obvious why educational facilities are going to be the first to be targeted, because the last thing Israel wants is a well-educated Palestinian population that says, hey, we are getting the short end of the stick here, and we are going to organize. You keep that population with as little education as possible, and it diminishes their ability to organize and make their life better for themselves.
You know what's interesting about that? That is literally the exact same rationale in the feudal era, in the Dark Ages, why they wouldn't give peasants education, because peasants that are educated are more likely to stand up for themselves. And in this case, Palestinians that are more educated probably have a better time of recording war crimes. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen time after time they shoot medics. Israel, it's like in the US, we see what happens. They're like, again, little bit of fear, just shoot everything. Israel is far more disciplined in that they're like, okay, we're going to shoot the guy's crotch off so he can't ever reproduce. So even if it's a small crime, you can't have any more kids now, ha ha ha. Or they'll shoot them in the kneecaps. Whereas the U.S. is very keen on not doing that because they're worried about having to pay people through lawsuits that survive. Israel has the opposite thing where they say they don't have the ability. It's a separate country that we occupy, an apartheid state where they're not equal. So we're just going to maim them and change it from killing them to being a burden on everyone else around them who has to care with them with absolutely no resources, no money, no infrastructure, no hospitals, no rehab, no anything of that nature. Israel is becoming the very thing they sought to escape from. And I want to always make the distinction that we're talking about the government, not necessarily the people, although sadly there are a lot of people in Israel that this applies to as well. Again, I always bring up that shirt that you can just buy for when the soldiers are sniping civilians, which is the woman in the burqa pregnant with a bullseye over the stomach, and it says 1 shot, 2 kills. This is what Israel is becoming.
Yeah,
and to a degree has become.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so sad.
Yeah,
it's really strange to talk about this too in sort of this era where.
Sorry to interrupt you. But then on top of that, Israel then goes, "Why does the Middle East hate us? They have no reason to hate us. What have we ever done?"
I don't know, you're a nuclear power in the region that is systematically oppressing your neighbor.
And don't forget, too, just before we move on, Trump also gave the big thumbs up for Israel to officially claim the Golan Heights, too.
Yeah,
another land grab into another sovereign country. I'm almost wondering, well, what's next? Lebanon, Jordan, more Syria, parts of Egypt?
Well, this is part of why they're allied with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is getting what they want, so they're happy to be allies with Israel because they're both trying to be expansionists exist in the modern era. And you can't do what you did 2,000 years ago and just massacre everyone.
Yeah.
That would be, you can't do that. And you can't do what you've even done a few hundred years ago and just run in with your military and take the place over. It's this much longer, protracted situation where you wear down with a new form of attrition, where Israel gets $10 million a day. It's a very wealthy country. They have Medicare for all, so their citizens are quite healthy. And, well, other places don't have that.
Yeah. It's the crisis that we have.